Before we get started today, we have an announcement to make. It is with a heavy heart that we have to announce the passing of Brother Paul Arnold Solomon. Brother Paul passed away on the morning of Memorial Day, Monday the 29th of May, at the age of 72. He was born on April 18th, 1945 in Conway, South Carolina, to Al Solomon and Elise Satisky. Brother Paul was preceded in death by his parents, his wife Carolyn, his son Stephen, and his brother Steve. He is survived by his sons, Andrew and Josh, his grandchildren, Brandon, Tiffany, Zach, Alex, Megan, Brianna, Jacob, and Kaylee, and his great-grandchildren, Serena, Elena, Reagan, and Jasmine. It was an honor to call him a friend, companion, and brother. Brother Paul was very passionate about Masonry. He was a past master and the sitting secretary of Julian Field Lodge 908, and a member of multiple organizations, including Texas Chapter and Council, Maslow Shrine, the Maslow Shrine Band, and the Fort Worth Scottish Rite Valley. He was a Scottish Rite 32nd degree Knight Commander of the Court of Honor. We'll miss hearing him play his trumpet before the Scottish Rite stated meeting dinners. Brother Paul was thoughtful, kind, and always eager to help. When I first started out in Masonry, I constantly badgered him with questions, to which he always had wonderful, educational, and patient replies. He was always willing to sit down and chat, both for educational purposes and for fun, and it was always fun to sit down and watch a movie with him while taking turns making commentary on it. Practicing degree work and proficiencies with him was immensely fun. Whenever you got something right after struggling with it for a while, he'd give you this very wise-looking nod that was very reassuring. It felt like it was impossible to walk away from a conversation with Brother Paul and not feel like you'd learned something, bettered yourself, or brightened your day in some way. Brother Paul was a great man, and the mortal world is left a little less rich for his passing, but now heaven is left a little more rich. If you're interested in paying your respects to Brother Paul and supporting his family in this trying time, graveside services for him will be held tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. on Friday, June 2nd, in the Moore Memorial Gardens in Arlington. Please bring your white apron and come wearing a dark coat and tie. Please pray for Paul's family, celebrate his life, and rejoice now that he is in the arms of his loving Creator.
Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants. Welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
This is Grant Gates, current Tyler 148.
And this is Gabriel Jagush, Master Mason with Fort Worth 148.
What are we at? Episode 15? We've been doing this for 15 weeks now. This is 16. I got to get the hang of that. I'm behind. That's crazy.
Off, man. You keep forgetting that first one. Probably because I wasn't there. Yeah, I don't think it counts at this point.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
Scratch that.
Well, let's just say episode 16, but we've got 15 complete ones, shall we say?
Yes. So we're getting that. I mean, that's 3 months of podcast. I mean, I never imagined it would have gone so swimmingly really as it has.
About that.
Yes.
Man, I got to be honest, guys. I look forward to this every week.
As do I. My wife, she comes in and gets all of her stuff because she falls asleep on the couch. Not go in and wake her up. She's like my Wednesday night tradition.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so get to talk about some fun stuff this week. But before we get into all that, we start out with news.
All right, let's talk news. In Temple news, on May 25th, the Scottish Rite held a festive board. It was a great time. It's called usually like a table lodge. In Texas, we can't do table lodges, so we have to call them festive boards. But it was a great time. It was really complicated at first because every time you do a toast, you have to do a certain number of movements and you say a certain set of words and everything like that. Very, very entertaining, especially making mistakes. So whenever you make a mistake, you would get fined a poker chip. And so you buy poker chips for a certain fee or whatever, and all of the proceeds get donated to the Almoners Fund. Tom Spencer did a great job as table master, and he was generally quite funny. And Brother Eddie Robinson, when he gave his speech about baseball, it was fascinating, and he was hilarious. He was a genuine pleasure to listen to. If you've never been to a festive board or a table lodge or a St. John's feast or whatever your jurisdiction calls it, you should go. It's super fun. On May 27th, we had the Temple Open House. It was pretty quiet. We had a good time hanging out with other brothers, even though there weren't many visitors. Apparently, other temples had kind of a hit and miss experience. Some only had a few visitors, some maybe none, but some had a lot of visitors. So Memorial Day weekend, I think that was kind of rough. Maybe not the greatest weekend since so many people from the lodge are out of town and since so many prospective visitors are out of town. So in local news, McKinney, Texas, on Monday, Memorial Day, May 29th, Pecan Grove Cemetery had their 33rd annual Memorial Day tribute. This year focused on the World War I veterans due to the centennial anniversary of the United States entering World War I. The Commandery Standard Guard did a presentation of the American and Texan flags and marched into the beat of drums. Amazing Grace was played on bagpipes while everyone stood to attention. So many thanks to the 20 or so Sir Knights that attended for being great representatives of the fraternity and for doing such a touching job doing the tribute to the fallen. In Texas news, Iowa Park Lodge 713 presented Sergeant Sherry Fowler of the Iowa Park Police Department with the Marion Millender Community Service Award for her long and faithful service to the city and community of Iowa Park. The pictures from the event are pretty good, and it looked really touching, so congratulations and thank you to Sergeant Fowler. In national news, another Masonic temple, this time in Columbus, Ohio. Another Masonic temple has been hit by anti-Masonic graffiti. Northland Masonic Temple in North Columbus has been vandalized. The vandals sprayed X's over the square and compasses on the front side, and they left a bunch of political and other anti-Masonic messages all over the building. So, brothers from the Northland Masonic Temple, we're thinking about y'all and sending prayers y'all's way. That's pretty awful stuff, so we hope y'all get back on your feet after this real quick. In Iowa, as of May 22nd of this year, June is now Masonic Month in Iowa. Before being reassigned as an ambassador to China, Brother Governor Terry Branstad signed a proclamation recognizing Masonry's positive effects on society and designating June as Masonic Month. So congratulations to our Iowan brethren. I don't actually know if it's Iowan or if there's another word for it, but if there is, please forgive me. All right, so for the discussion questions, I've got two of them, depending on time. First question, what is your ideal way to dispense money out for reimbursements, lodge expenses, that kind of thing? Last week's episode, we talked about the Harmony Lodge 67 getting embezzled by their treasurer, right? So we want to see, hey, what is the best system in your opinion, based off of lodge experience, based off of business experience, maybe like a family situation where you guys had somebody not trustworthy or whatever. How do you set up a totally impenetrable way to handle business expenses, reimbursements, that kind of thing?
That might be almost impossible, but I kind of like the system we have to where, we have our regular checking account that the treasurer has access to, and it might have at any given time, the most it's going to have is 1,000. But then our endowment fund, as we call it, the investment fund, it's in a totally other account with a investment company called Thrivent. And those are the people that have access to those are three totally different people. So no one person has the keys to all the cash. And those 3 people actually have to be, 2 of them be together in order to draw out any money from the investment fund.
Does the checking account have like a debit card associated with it, or is it more locked down than that?
No, it took us a long time to get a debit card, but we did. And you can put limits on them per day and things like that, which is, if you felt uncomfortable, but you just keep your bank account low in the first place, transfer money if you need it. But you can't function without a debit card, because when it comes to reimbursements, sure, those are going to happen from time to time. But I think 99% of your purchases should come right out of that lodge account. If something needs to be bought for the lodge buys it. You create so much more work when it's like, okay, I bought the monitors and now you need to write me a receipt for that, and I need to turn in my receipt. You give me money, get the receipt. Creates a bunch of trouble.
Yeah. The one thing that I would say that reimbursements have an advantage over the debit card is that that's another layer of security, kind of. That, and you get the reward, individual members get reward points on the credit cards if they put it on a credit card. So,
no, there's truth to it all. I mean, because you're right, you do reimbursements that you got 2 people going through the process again. So while those things are going to be out there, but if it's a lodge deal that the whole lodge is voted on, you voted in your secretary, because I'm unfortunately the one with the debit card. So I ordered all the monitors, anything that needs to come off. We've even opened it up to PayPal now, to where we have ways to pay for degree fees and stuff through PayPal, to where there's a little bit of money in that as well, where you can do some online purchases securely.
So I know one of the things that not doing a whole ton of reimbursements does is, I've been to other lodges stated meetings where you spend 15 minutes approving reimbursements about the lodge, for little stuff. Like Rhit said, we had to order monitors, or we bought pizza for this event, or we bought the supplies for the food and things like that. And that can, add time to a stated meeting. And typically, at least in our lodge, we don't like our stated meetings to run abnormally long.
No.
The stated meeting is not necessarily a reward for everybody. And I'm kind of a big fan of being the Tyler, because, if I don't want to listen to the minutes, I can just stay outside.
Yeah. The one, so like an easy way to kind of deal with that, so that it's not an ordeal every time, is that you assign a committee. You have a standing committee that does reimbursements, right? They list off, okay, hey, we've got X number of dollars in reimbursements. We have validated them. We looked at it, and it's all in the clear. Vote yes or no to accept these, right? So you just assign a committee, have them take care of it, not instated, and then just have them approve the final number of total reimbursements for that month.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the ways to get stated meetings going fast is just to delegate to committees and make them powerful. And so they just come back with a 2-option vote. Yes, no.
Committees, they have all the answers, don't they?
Well, that's the way it seems sometimes.
Sometimes they have too many answers. In my experience, you got a committee of 5, you got 5 different answers.
Well, and here's the thing, because a good committee is for anything is going to help a lodge out. The trick is we have to hold each other accountable to make sure we're doing our job. If you're on any committee, especially the reimbursement committee or whatever you may call it, they need to be held accountable if they're not doing their jobs. As we all should. That's how we get better.
Yes, sir.
Iron sharpens iron. So, question 2. Disregarding Grand Lodge law, right? So, I don't really, regardless of what, dangerous statements to make, obviously, but no. Regardless of what Grand Lodge law actually says regarding this, I want y'all's personal take on this. So, what do you guys think about businesses using Masonic emblems, right? Like whether they're owned by a brother or not. The thing that kind of sparked this for me is that there's a bar in Cork, Ireland that I think it recently opened up, but the name of the bar is Mason, and the A in Mason is the square and compasses. So what do y'all think about that kind of stuff?
I don't like it, but I don't necessarily like the square and compasses being plastered all over everything either. So that cat's not out of the bag, so let's not let it out of the bag. It's kind of like running for campaign too. I wouldn't want it on there if you're running for campaign. So let's keep it that way. You know what I mean? If you're a Mason-owned company, there's ways you can let me know that. You know, because I'm gonna use local anyway. But it's
especially in the context of a bar. I don't like it. Primarily because we do a lot of good work in the community, and we spend a lot of time, I don't want to say fighting, but working against those who, through ignorance, bash our fraternity, right? So it's, through ignorance, they go and they make up these wild accusations like we talked about last week. And and to have a bar, a place where folks are coming out inebriated or going in with the intention of getting, and everyone knowing it's a bar with a square and compass on the sign, I kind of have a problem with that. But again, I know I've said this before. If you're going to be the guy weaving through traffic, flipping people the bird, please do not put a square and compass on your truck. Same thing. If you're representing the fraternity, you need to do it in a good way. I don't like it with a bar. I don't like it with a beer. And really, I don't like seeing folks use it to promote a business. I don't think that's what it's all about. I guess I could, promote what I do through the lodges, but that's not where I go to work. It's where I go to get away from work. So, there you go.
I think it's a real fine line because it's our duty to support each other as brothers. I mean, there's a trust there. So there's a wide variety of professionals out there that you can get to know and use that are Masons. But to start slapping it on things like that would and it's a weird tie-in, but might promote people to join for those reasons. It's the same thing with campaigning, and with that EA charge that says we can't engage in conversations with people who ridicule it through ignorance, that's what makes it hard having it out there even in the first place. So we've got control on it for that. Let's keep control of it, because when it is like we talked about on a beer or whatever that's not actually a Mason, we can't say, hey, well, that's not us because we don't put our square and compass out there. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere.
So you got it.
T-shirts and pins and rings and everything else. And you know what? I have a square and compass on my truck, but
that cat's out of the bag, and that's awesome. I'm perfectly fine with it, but since the other cat's not out of the bag, I would like to see it kept in there, because I don't think promoting your business with square and compasses was what it was meant for. But I don't want to give the impression that Masons shouldn't support other Masons' business. You should even pay a little extra, not expect a discount. You should pay extra because this guy's going to stand by his word. You're not going to have to worry in 2 weeks if something goes wrong, he's not going to take care of it.
I just thought it was kind of interesting that we have this example of the bar that has the square and compasses as part of their logo, when a bar seems to kind of directly conflict with one of the Four Cardinal Virtues, which is what we're talking about today.
Yes.
Whoa, transitions. All right.
No, I thought this would be a great topic because I love the variety of topics that we've already discussed, but I think we always need to pepper our conversations with some good esoteric talk about our ritual and about our work. We're Masons. It's a Masonic podcast.
That, and it's both, yes, it's esoteric, but it's also a very practical sort of subject.
True that. Yes.
And it's kind of want to lead for those who are, you always end up with a question whether or not it's something you can talk about on a podcast. This is something you do find in the Grand Lodge of Texas Monitor. And, we won't be talking about anything that should be considered tiled material tonight.
Correctamundo. This is all in print. You can Google the Four Cardinal Virtues and follow along.
Right. And in the ritual, we discuss how the cardinal virtues are related to specific parts of ritual. So we won't discuss that because that is ritualistic. If you want to, you can go find the answer online. It's right out there, but we're not going to disclose that. But we are going to avoid specifically this saying how it relates to ritual, but we might say something like, as y'all know, prudence relates to modes of recognition, especially as how they appear in ritual. And I feel like that's fair game, because it's not actually disclosing why. There is not a lot of time in just about an hour-ish to discuss all of these super in-depth, so we are just kind of just barely touching on it, and we've got to come back to these again and again and again, but, maybe in different formats, but, so this is kind of like the Cliff Notes version.
Absolutely, because further down the road, we could do a podcast for each one of these.
And that would be really cool.
Mini-series, but I think this is a good way to kind of breach the subject and give some bros some rabbit holes to go chase after.
Yeah. And so kind of for brothers that have forgotten or for non-Masons, what we consider to be the four cardinal virtues are temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. And so they're part of the Entered Apprentice lecture. When a guy is first initiated into Masonry, part of what we teach him about is the four cardinal virtues and how important they are. In ritual, we have a long form lecture and we have a short form lecture. And part of the problem with the short form lecture is that it mentions the four cardinal virtues, but then it doesn't really elaborate on them. And so once the short form portion is done, you're kind of going, wait a minute, what about this? So you have to go back to the monitor and look at it, and it's a little bit more roundabout. But the value in those four descriptions is incredible. So it's worth talking about them with your brothers. It's worth talking about that. Go look it up in the monitor. Go read that. If you didn't get the long form lecture, or if you don't remember the long form lecture, which I wouldn't blame you, go find it in your monitor, read up on them. They're super valuable.
Sure. And we all know by the time you get to towards the end of the long form lecture, you have been drinking from a fire hose of Masonic words and phrases that you've never heard before at the end of your Entered Apprentice. So your mind is pretty torched for most guys by the time you get there anyways. So definitely worth reading. I've read it a couple of times, and each time I kind of find a new meaning to what is stated in the monitor about our four cardinal virtues.
And funny you say that, because Daniel Queen, he did the long form lecture of the master's degree, and I went up and talked to him afterwards, and he said, these lectures, while we do it for the candidate, they're for the guys that have heard it 5 or 6 times, because you're going to get something out of it every time. You can actually pay attention to it, but you're right. When you just went through the degree, you catch a lot of it, but still your hair is being blown back. You're like, it's coming from all angles. So while I don't see it much at all anymore, it used to be when the lecture started, a lot of people would book it and leave.
Which is kind of the opposite of what you want. If anything, I'm fine with the candidate's eyes glazing over and him going, blah, because he's already burnt out. I want everybody else to hear that, but
you got it. We should be paying attention, because there's no way you get it all until you hear it maybe 1,000,007 times, which is more than a lifetime provides. So as best you can, pay attention to those things, because especially right there at the end, temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. What a great cornerstone of building a good life,
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I like to describe the Entered Apprentice degree as an instruction manual for life. So
100%. That's really my elevator speech for Freemasonry. It's a self-help experience as opposed to a self-help book. If you really dive into it, you're going to become a better man, just like a self-help book will do. I don't know if y'all have ever read any of those, but I used to read them by the droves back in the day.
I guess we'll just go in order.
Yeah, let's start with Temperance.
We'll start with Temperance.
Temperance.
Temperance refers to the temperature. See, and if you temperance your hand on the stove when it's hot, you will burn it.
Actually,
what I like about
not far off though, because like in the Kabbalah, like it's associated with fire. So it's kind of funny that you say that, because like the whole idea behind tempering something, when you temper a sword, you're putting it in and out of the forge and you're dunking it in the oil and everything like that. You are exposing it to different forms of temperature.
Sure. And the root word leads you to that. Your Latin roots will lead you to that. We define it as restraint upon our afflictions and passions, which render the body tame and governable, and frees the mind from allurements of vice, is how we define it in our monitor.
No, I like that because for me, when I originally started looking into this, it was hard for me to ascertain the difference between temperance and prudence, where temperance has everything to do with restraint. And the best example is drinking, but name any of it, eating, talking too much, anything like that. It's all about restraint and holding yourself accountable.
Well, and it's the like you said, it's the first one we talk about in lecture, and it's about restraint. It goes right back to the compasses. It's one of the first things that we tell the entered apprentice after the obligation, and we explain the compasses to him, and this whole idea of living your life within certain bounds, and that's why we hammer temperance. It's probably, I don't know that any one of these is more important than the others, but I would say that if there was one that was more important, it would probably be temperance.
I might agree with you, but temperance is hard to gauge any of them. Of course, I'm going to pick justice, but we'll talk about that one here in a minute. Because it is important to be able to restrain your passions.
Well, and temperance may be the most difficult to master. I don't know if
yeah,
you could maybe say it's the most important, but it may be the most difficult to master. And this may be coming from a personal perspective, but when you talk about a vice or a passion that you let get out of control, that's something that can happen to all of us very quickly before you know it's there. And for a Mason, it's teaching us to recognize those things as your feet are stepping on the path, and stop or get on another path, or get your body and your mind moving in a direction where you have it under control. And this doesn't necessarily only go back to drinking or smoking cigarettes or whatever it may be, but there are passions that you can have that are inherently good, but when taken to an extreme can become negative.
Being a troll on Facebook.
I don't know that that's a positive thing.
Well, I'm saying if you're not tempered, you could turn into that.
So,
right.
And that's one of the reasons why again, this is monitorial, no secrets. That's this ritual safe. This virtue should be the constant practice of every Mason, as thereby he is taught to avoid excess and the contracting of licentious or vicious habits, right? And then yada, 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 yada. It keeps going. But so I love that distinction that they make. And it's exactly what you're talking about, Grant. Like, it doesn't have to be sinister. It doesn't have to be illegal. It doesn't even have to be harmful to be destructive, right? It's, it's the excess. If you like football and you go but all you do is watch football, then maybe that's
fantasy stats and watch ESPN and all of a sudden you're spending 6 to 8 hours of your free time a day looking at football.
Yeah, and the same could apply to books. If you read books and all you do is read books and you don't talk to your kids and you don't talk to your wife and you just come home and you read, maybe,
that's an issue.
Put the book down.
Yeah. It'll cause problems, guaranteed.
What comes to mind for me is bodybuilding, working out. You see those guys that get to a point where they are so obsessed with minor changes that they're trying to make to their body. I'm going to get my bicep an inch bigger, that they end up taking something that was inherently good, being physically fit, and then they're adding on anabolic steroids, which are inherently bad for the body. So you take something that's inherently good and you walk a path to where you alone have turned it into something negative in your life.
Yeah. And I mean, and it starts out, health oriented, and then you develop a form of body dysmorphia, which, that's a really dark path to head down when you started off so well,
Well, and let me throw this one out there too, because to tie it back into Masonry, I've seen people who have gone so far down the ritual rabbit hole that they think everything has to be word perfect. And while that is extremely important, it's not the only aspect of Masonry that's important. There's other aspects as well, to where they get micro-focused on making sure every lodge is doing open and close correctly, and it becomes a policing thing more than a teaching thing. They just let their passions run wild on it, and they're not tempered with it. And you could take that with the social Mason that doesn't do the ritual right. You could take that with the guy who thinks we're a charity and doesn't care much about the ritual or, the social aspect of it or the history, the philosophy. You've got to learn to temper to make room for all of that in Masonry. Because a good example is when the grading first came out for opening and closing, when we received the DDGM, there were a lot of lodges that were really up in arms about it. Like, come in and grade me, this and that. And it wasn't taken well. While the sentiment is good, we need to be checked on our ritual. We need to be held accountable. There's just a certain way you have to do it. And temperance plays a big part in how you approach the brothers with that, to make sure our ritual is word perfect. Because while there is no perfect degree, it should be important to every Mason that we put on a good degree, that we've practiced. We know it.
Canada had the experience and we're proud of what we did. And
you got it.
To your point, you're going to sow disharmony if you take anything too far, but especially in Masonry, you take ritual work too far and you take it to a point where you're not focused on the person experiencing the ritual, but you're focused on the fact that, man, Senior Deacon Gabe did not cut that corner sharply. He got lazy, and we're going to be talking about that. You missed the whole point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When you start,
corners weren't as sharp as they should have been the other night. By the way, you need to.
This is the part where I get criticized in front of everybody, in front of the entire internet.
Well, and when it turns into a browbeating, it's no fun for anybody. But we correct we correct each other after the ritual. Me and Will talked about what we did wrong at conferring the degree. I talked to you about some things that you had said, but we do it in such a manner that encourages us to get better. Not like, God, this guy's just wearing me out.
Well, and a lot of times it's like, man, can you believe what I did during that? And be like, I know, next time try this,
Well, no, I messed up in the last degree, and I felt my face turning so red because I knew exactly when I did it. I was embarrassed for myself, and that motive. You guys coming to me, if you guys had come to me and started ripping into me about it, I would not have come home having a good night. But we talked about it, and now, on my end, I'm really pumped up for the next four school,
Well, exactly. And if that happens to you 10 times in a row when you go to lodge, Grant Gates ain't coming back to lodge. I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
So
understandably.
Yes. So temperance plays a part in that, from when you're worshipful master. Sure, that's your year in the East, but your lodge is still running the show.
Yeah, you are not Kim Jong-un. You can't get away with everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So temperance plays a huge part. I think, temperance and prudence especially, name a movie or a famous story that was written about a hero that was temperate and prudent. The hero either had the fortitude or he was exacting justice. So they're kind of, temperance and prudence especially are those looked over. So, you said earlier that temperance could be the most important. I think there's truth in that, in a sense that we look over it so much because it's just not glamorized. For a man to be temperate and prudent is not thought of as, it's not glamorized in today's society.
Yeah.
Like
when you say,
courage.
Temperance and prudence, not being aspects of what we would consider the hero traditionally, it kind of makes me think of the hero's journey, right? Those 12 steps. It's,
yes.
The hero, he's already got maybe he doesn't have the fortitude yet, and maybe he hasn't learned how to enact justice yet, but he will have those by the end of the story, right? And maybe he'll have figured out something about the other two. The one that does have the prudence and the temperance will be like the mentor or the wise sage or the wizard or whatever that teaches him how to be a hero, right? So it's just kind of, kind of adjacent to the subject, but that's kind of what made me think of it.
It's like, oh man, hold on, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Lord.
Splinter.
Splinter, yeah, Master Splinter is temperate. We want to be Master Splinter. We do not want to be prudence. Donatello. You don't want to be Donatello, and you don't want to be Raphael. He is not. Raphael is not temperate, gentlemen. I'm just going to put that out there.
Well, all of those guys. To get nerdy, each of those Ninja Turtles have, because Raphael's got fortitude, Donatello's got prudence, Leo's got the temperance, and of course Michelangelo. I don't know where he falls in, but these traits are tied into every one of these heroes' stories, but they're just not glamorized. Gandalf may have gotten the most glamour out of any of them, maybe Yoda. But it's just not, those aren't the traits that that everybody's waiting for in the movie or the book. That guy, he was so prudent at that point. You're waiting for that part where justice is exact and it's off with his head.
So, it's people don't remember the decisions that were, people don't celebrate the decisions that were made back with Elrond. They celebrate the fortitude of Samwise and of Frodo at Mount Doom. But nerd alert. Anyway, so
well, that's a good segue into fortitude, though.
Yeah, probably. And then I kind of want to go back. After we cover these, I want to go back and touch on some of the weirder esoteric aspects of these. But yeah, so let's talk about fortitude. One of my favorite lines in that lecture is, "This virtue is equally removed from rashness and cowardice. You know, it's that whole bravery versus bravado thing. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. It's that hero that everybody admires, you know, the hero's hero that can go out and take care of business, but doesn't go around town talking about it. You know, knows he has the fortitude to do what's right within him. But the best word you said, it doesn't go around with bravado. I mean, he's just a humbled hero.
And sure. I think it's pretty fundamentally based on faith and, you know, and in trust, because one of the things that we talk about, specifically the way that we define fortitude in that extended monitorial lecture, is that it's that noble and steady purpose of mind, which whereby we are enabled to undergo any pain, peril, or danger, if prudentially deemed expedient, right? But when are you going to decide that it's prudent to do this, to undergo a pain or undergo a peril or a danger or whatever, right? You have to have some level of trust, some level of faith. So you can't really have fortitude without faith, pretty much. Or at least that's my opinion. You know, disclosure.
Well, you're right, because you have to have the line to where it's like, okay, when do I have to stand up? When is my line being crossed? And of course, maybe when Masonry first started way back when, this had a lot to do with actual bravery and where there was like physical pain involved. There was physical peril and real danger for your well-being. It's not so much that way anymore for us. You know, fortitude's going to apply more to our moral fortitude. And a good example is when I was a very young Master Mason, there was a joke told at dinner that was not a joke that I laugh at anymore. But being the young guy, everybody did laugh. I just kind of chuckled, you know, just part of the group. Peer pressure is what happened. I mean, I got hit with peer pressure hard. And there's been many instances since then that kind of thing has happened to where I've stood my moral ground and either said something, certainly didn't engage in it, but learned from that point. You know, you've got to have the moral fortitude to do what's right. If you know, because today's society, people see stuff that's going on that shouldn't. Most just kind of mind their own business.
Right along, right down the road.
You got it. Yep. You know, and you've.
Oh, go ahead, Rhett. Sorry, buddy.
No, I was just going to say you've got to have the moral fortitude to stand up and say something, which is tough, man, because it might put you in actual peril, real danger.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, you kind of look at that, and nowadays, you know, one of the most common consequences, right? You know, it's like, man, like this could be social suicide on my part, right? Like if I'm going to stand up against this thing, everybody in this group is going to ostracize me. And sometimes that's what you need to do, right? It's that you need to be brave. And the kind of, I've got a bullet point for each one of them that I've been calling ritual adjace, you know, in quotes. The one I have for this one is there will be a time when you need to be brave, right? And it's not going to be pretty, but you need to be brave anyway. So whether it's standing up for somebody when somebody else tells an off-color joke, or when you see somebody doing something wrong, you know, like, hey, did you just take money out of that? That kind of thing.
Yes, because there's a time to say something, there's a time to not, because that first time that I heard the joke, I was mortified, like frozen in my seat. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of laughed and saved face with the crowd, you know, so I'm still the cool kid. But now when stuff like that happens, that's when I go refill my tea or just don't engage at all and find a way to another table and have the bravery to do that. But then there's times, like you said, like you see something, hey, did you just take money out of there? That you have to stand up and say something, whether it's social suicide or not.
Well, and there's so many times in your professional life that, you know, this type of thing happens. So you take this our lessons in Masonry are supposed to make us better men, you take it and you apply it to your professional life, and you have that chance to tell the whole truth or tell the truth with a smile. You have a chance to brush something under the rug where maybe you made a mistake that could come back and drop on somebody else. Having fortitude in your personal life and standing up and be willing to say that, nope, I'm not perfect, guys. I messed that up. Let's fix it. Goes so far in a professional life.
Yes.
And it's not a physical peril that you're putting yourself up against, but you know what? It's a peril to your pride.
I think that's a great point, Grant, that one of the hardest things to do that takes real moral fortitude is to admit when you're wrong. Truly admit when you're wrong and learn from it, because, oh man, you see it today. People are so stuck to what they believe, what their parents believed, or however they come to these conclusions. They don't care what the facts say. Those are alternative facts, So it takes some real fortitude to admit, hey, what I thought all along was wrong. If it's a little mini mistake, yeah, that might be easy, but something you believed your whole life, and you're like, I've got to change now. That takes some courage.
Yeah, well, the peril that the ego is placed in is the most painful probably now.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I know when I was a young Mason, a situation like that came up, and it happened to be after I had been reading my monitor. It was about 2 weeks after something like that came up, and this actually came to mind, and that's why I brought up the example, because that changed a path that I took, which actually turned out for the better. Standing up and letting ego take a hit turned out to be something that was good for myself and turned out to be something good for my career. So, it takes something. It's hard. I've had to do it. It was not fun. I did not enjoy it at the time, but in the long run, it's turned out to be a better thing.
Yeah. Usually when you give your ego a gut punch, it's a good thing. It's hard to do, but it's a good thing.
It hurts.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no doubt. I see fortitude, as something very important, but I think fortitude comes out of these other three virtues. You master these other three and fortitude will fall right in place. Because it's like you said earlier, Gabe, you got to have faith, which is essentially you have developed moral character of what you believe is right and wrong. Mm. And if you don't have that in your head, a true belief of what's right and wrong, why do you need fortitude? Because you're not going to ever stand up for anything.
So,
and I would. Oh, sorry.
You're good. All you, brother.
Okay. And I would possibly present the alternative, like the reverse of that. That without fortitude, you can't carry out any of those three. If you don't have if you don't have the strength, the moral fiber, you can't be temperate. You can't be prudent if you're not strong enough to be prudent when you need to, and you can't enact justice. But it's not. I don't know that it works that way where one causes the others and the others cause one.
No,
but it's a symbiotic thing. It happens at the same time. But one of the things that this is getting pretty esoteric is that I was doing some research on how these relate to the Kabbalah, right? And fortitude is associated with, I'm going to say this wrong, Asaya, the world of action. And it's specifically with the Sephiroth Malkuth, which is kingship. It's the densest, lowest Sephiroth, and is connected to the creation of God. It's the only one that isn't an emanation of God. It emanates from his creation, and it gives tangible form to all the other emanations of God, all the other sephirots, right? So basically, like, fortitude is the connection that we have that allows us to just make these other virtues happen in the real world. So maybe we have these other virtues in our heads, but fortitude lets us carry them out. That's just one way of looking at it. I might be totally off base because I don't understand Kabbalah.
No, I mean, if you think about it, it totally makes sense. In order to, I mean, because you said it earlier, in order to carry out any of that, you know, to be temperate, you've got to have the courage to do it. And, you know, there is no way you can rank one of these as more important as the other because they are so intertwined with each other. And that's why they're grouped together.
Those are two really interesting ways to look at that, guys. I mean, I'm kind of surprised how Rhit thinks you have to have the other three to have fortitude, and Gabe thinks fortitude is the basis, or it feels like it's the basis for the other three. It's just shows you how far you can run down a rabbit hole with some of this stuff. I personally, I don't think any of them can exist without the others. Almost like four corners to a square. It's not a square until you have four corners.
Ooh.
Very good. Yes.
I think you would have liked the Oklahoma Indian degree.
I know I would have liked the Oklahoma Indian degree. I was working.
So it's just kind of it's kind of funny that you bring up four corners to a square and stuff like that. And I'm not going to communicate any of that online, but
I need to
you
go.
say that, and I went, you would have liked the OID degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's move on to prudence.
Yes, let us be prudent with our time.
That's true.
Oh, nice. Well done, Master Rhit.
So prudence, where temperance is about restraint, prudence is more about, it's more internal than it is regulating your external actions. It's that thinking before you act notion is what I gather from it. Mm-hmm. Because it tells us to basically base our actions off of logic and reason.
Yeah. The phrasing that is used in the ritual is prudence. Prudence teaches us to regulate our lives and actions agreeably to the dictate of virtue. Oh, no, of reason. Sorry. To the dictate of reason. And it elaborates on, and it is that habit by which we wisely judge and prudently determine on all things relevant to our present and our future happiness. So I really like the way that they tie that in. It's like, hey, if you live your life with common sense, through common sense, you'll be happy. Or at least, you'll probably be happy. There's obviously some things that are outside of our control. But generally speaking, it would seem that living a life filled with common sense does lead to happiness.
Yes. And, because you hear, be prudent when you go out to the bar or whatever, or, you think you tie that into those type of things to where I would get the two mixed up in exactly what they mean. And prudence is going to deal more with how you come to those conclusions. It's all internal, more or less, to where temperance is more has to do with the external things. And they are similar in a way.
To me, temperance is your actions. Prudence is the thought leading to the action.
There you go. And from the way you carry your demeanor to smile to all those, it's kind of, to get a little nerdy, it's the aura of how you carry yourself, your character, because everybody can, oh yeah, that guy's a great guy, or no, he's not so hot. And you figured that out through all the things he's done in his past that you've experienced through him, and you see that he didn't use prudence in his actions.
Well, and sometimes you have folks out there that have a very, very happy outward demeanor that when you come back to aura Rhit, you can feel an aura behind that outward demeanor that tells you that something in the foundation of their life is wrong to them, right? Whether it's wrong to society or wrong to anybody else does not matter, but it's wrong to them. So prudence, I also think, that internal thought when it talks about leading to our future happiness, you're building a foundation for what you do by engaging in the thought of, okay, is this the right thing? Is this the action that I want to take? Where will this action lead? What will be the consequence today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, the next 10 years? And that's when you get into a thought process that I could really identify with as a prudent thought process.
Yeah, I think a good way to relate it in today's terms is if any of you guys send out an important email, say to like the big boss that you're working at, do you reread what you typed?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean well, you should. I mean, you should, and that's prudence. That's re-examining your actions. Thinking before you speak. In a way,
I was messing with you, Rhit. I'm sorry. Of course, I reread it and I reorganize it, and I make sure that it is delivering the message in the way that I want the message to be delivered and to be received by the person getting the correspondence, whether that correspondence is a letter or a report or an email. You want to not only think about, again, how does this make me sound, but how are they going to receive it? What emotions are these going to invoke in the person reading?
No, because we've all had that email that the word was wrong and you wish you hadn't sent it and you're all embarrassed. And that's out there. Whether you like it or not, people are going to judge you because you put Y-O-U-R as opposed to Y-O-U''RE, or,
It drives me crazy, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And if you don't proofread, especially with autocorrect nowadays, it happens. And it's out there. And it's just a good comparison to the importance of prudence, because you reread that email and you catch that mistake, and now you don't look like the bumbling idiot to the grammar major, the English major. It's the same thing with your actions.
Sure.
You got to rethink those things before you carry them out.
Yeah, the Grant, what you said about prudence being kind of the foundation for a lot of things was kind of cool. And again, super nerdy stuff, but this is just the notes that I was collecting. Prudence is associated with the world of formation in Kabbalah, and one of those sephirots is foundation. It's I'm going to say this wrong. Yesod. So it's connecting the task to accomplish or wholly remember or the coherent knowledge, right? So just thought that was kind of interesting that you use that phrasing. But so there's a lot of things that are kind of just clicking here and there of just like, oh, hey, like that's something I read about earlier,
Worldviews, I think, whether you're pulling it from the Kabbalah or whether you're basing it on the Holy Bible or wherever your foundation of worldviews come from, there's only so many, because at the end of the day, something can only mean so many things, right? So for us to, for those two things to collide, like you just pointed out, is pretty cool. I've never read the Kabbalah, but that's how I envision prudence. I envision prudence as the foundation to be temperate, and the foundation to have fortitude. If fortitude to you means standing up and telling someone that, hey, what you said was wrong and you shouldn't do it like this. And a year ago, you said something that in their presence that was way off base. Well, guess what's coming right back up?
Right.
So again,
it goes hand in hand.
A day, a week, a month, a year, 10 years from now, what is it going to mean? And, that will, to me, that's how I envision a prudent thought process, at least for myself.
Yeah. There's a time and a place to say certain things. And sometimes the time and a place is not any time and nowhere, and
sometimes you shoot yourself in the foot,
because it'll come back to haunt you. And the ritual lecture type thing specifically talks about, not giving modes of recognition, like, hey, if you're in public, don't do this, don't show those signs, don't say those words, that kind of thing. But I feel like it applies in that big grand sense. You don't, like you said, you don't want to end up shooting yourself in the foot. And I love, there's this longer Latin saying that's, the motto of the UGLE is Audi Vitae Tace, right? Which is hear, see, be silent. But the full thing is Audi Vitae Tace si vis vivere in pace, right? Which is hear, see, be silent if you would live in peace. And so I feel like that wraps around to that whole, hey, live your life prudently and you will be happy.
Yeah, because if you're doing it to impress me, you're going to end up miserable. You may be happy for a period of time while you're on that journey, but you never accumulated anything for yourself. A good example, have you ever seen that movie Saving Private Ryan? Old days?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
So they asked Tom Hanks, the leader in the little army or whatever they were, they asked him about his wife, and he said, no, I'm not going to tell you that one. I'm saving that one for me. And that was such a powerful moment to me that it was like once he shared that with those guys, it was no longer his memory. It was their memory. And he kept that for himself, and while that may seem selfish in a way, caused an awkward moment for all the guys, he's a happier man for it. And if we did that more, that's what Masonry for me is all about. Because if you're not doing this for yourself, you're not going to enjoy it. There's plenty of things to do in Masonry that you can do that you say, oh, I'm helping this person, I'm doing this for this person. And all of a sudden, 10 or 15 years down the road, you realize I never did what I wanted to do. When that would have been just as noble, more noble. You'd have been a better, happier man for it. So I love the internalizing of it, aspect of it, which is what Prudence is all about. Save that for yourself. That's what the secrets of Freemasonry are all about. You discover that beautiful thing that, not your precious, but that thing that just really flips your wig. You don't have to go run and tell everybody about it. It's yours. That's your jewel. Enjoy it.
Sure. And we're ones to talk. We get on there and share it with the world a little bit, but there are plenty of things that I save for myself or save for a close conversation around a campfire. Guys, I had this thought. This is what I saw. Do you see it too? And sometimes bringing it up at the right point is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. because there's things to talk about for sure. That's what we get in groups for. And there's things to say for yourself that are your memories,
Sure.
Are your experiences, are your interpretations of what something might be. Because you may put it out there, you may get ridiculed. Somebody may agree with you, and then you run down that rabbit hole with them, and all of a sudden it doesn't become your thing, it becomes y'all's thing. And it's going to take you down a different path when this may have been meant just for you. So don't be afraid to make it your own and carry on with it in silence, because you are doing the craft good by carrying out your own journey. You're certainly going to inspire me and many others around you.
Sure. Well, I think we've officially talked about prudence, guys. You want to talk about justice a little bit?
Justice.
Let's hit up justice.
So, why justice is my favorite, and why I think it's the most important to me, is that saying in there where it says it's the very cement and support of civil society. All of those other virtues for me are for naught if you don't have society. If it's anarchy, and I say anarchy, if it's just complete, post-apocalyptic, everybody for themselves kind of thing, what's the point, Justice is so important of having that civility to carry these things out. So justice, one, it establishes society for us to carry out these other, temperance, fortitude, prudence. Justice gives us the platform to make that kind of stuff happen.
One of the things I really like about justice in that lecture, like you've said, it's, how it's the support, the cement and support of civil society, but the lecture makes it very clear. It says, not only is this virtue consistent with divine and moral laws, right? It's saying, justice is natural. I feel, and this is my interpretation of it. So, maybe people might say, no, the world isn't just naturally or whatever. But I want to say that this is a human virtue, right? The world may not be fair. The world may not be just. But humanity in general, I feel, has kind of the innate capacity for this. Justice is a natural consequence of humans treating each other like humans and expressing love and all of these things. So I thought the ritual wording behind it makes me think like, hey, this is always going to happen in some form if you let it happen.
I couldn't agree more, because if you want to boil down justice, because we have the human concept of justice, eye for an eye kind of thing. You kill somebody, you go to jail. That's justice that we think of in terms. But if you boil it down in terms of nature, look at any other part of nature. We're the only one with conscience that can make our own decisions. The rest, lives in a habitat or a society that is true and just. It has certain laws and, that it abides by. Like a tree, you grow, you die, you're in a storm, you get a limb broke. So it is true and just. And I think it is inherent in in the nature of us. Absolutely, we all seek it out, because it's just something that's a part of us. Nobody wants to live in a society that doesn't follow some type of reason, that doesn't have a purpose. And justice provides the platform for all of that.
Yeah,
so
one of the things that I really like about it is that even if sometimes justice isn't present in the world, because there will be times when that's just not there. In the ritual, phrasing this vaguely, there's a part where it's made very clear to us that we are just people, and as our job as Masons is to always be just, and through that I think we get to spread justice. If we can count on ourselves to be just, then we should theoretically be able to dispense justice in the world or help it flourish, that kind of thing. So the way that I really like it. I've been relating stuff to the elements and stuff to different aspects of stuff. That justice gets associated with air. It's the freest of all the elements, and it fits in any container, and it's available to everyone, right? So sometimes, we can be that we can be a breath of fresh air, if need be.
No, absolutely. I mean, because, it goes on to where you render every man his just due, no matter his distinction. Doesn't matter his race, religion, orientation, anything. The true just person gauges by what is what is just. What's justice?
And,
weigh it on the scales.
And the lecture is very clear on a truly good person is incomplete without a sense of justice. So if you are not just, you cannot truly call yourself good, which I think is just a really powerful concept.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, how can you be an even kill guy if you don't have any form of justice within you? If you don't know right from, because that's essentially what justice is knowing right from wrong. Then you bring in fortitude to carry it out. To get the process started, and in comes prudence, and finally temperance, and justice is served. Yep. And there's your process. It's a four steps.
And so traditionally, justice is associated with the East. It's associated with the worshipful master. It's associated with the sunrise. It's associated with wisdom, right? You can't you cannot properly dispense justice unless you are wise. But one of the things that I love about justice is that it's associated with power and beauty and mercy. And I feel like those are some of those are components of justice, and then some of those are the results of justice. But
yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to the story of King Solomon cutting the baby in half, and the mom was like, "No, I mean, because that's true wisdom. It took for him to figure that out, if it actually took place. That took true wisdom for him to figure out who the mom was and complete justice." So I like how they tie wisdom and justice together, because they are, they're very closely related. They'd be brother and sister, if not one and the same.
Well, gentlemen, this has been a very fulfilling discussion. Let's get some final thoughts. What's your last take on the Four Cardinal Virtues? And please, Cliff Notes version.
My thing is that I hope guys take away from this is that the process is in our ritual. The process is there. Study it, learn it. I mean, because like I just said, here's the 4-step process on how to carry these cardinal virtues out and how to carry justice out. It has a process for every scenario you could come encounter with in life, and how to properly deal with it. Just get into that ritual, memorize it, read your monitor, reread it, rememorize, dig into it until it becomes your own.
For me, it's that these 4 things that are often forgotten at the end of the entered apprentice degree really serve as a basis for your foundation in your Masonic journey. So let's not forget them. Let's work on them, and they have a lot to teach us. Even if you feel that you're a temperate, imprudent person, everyone has room to work, and I think this encourages you to do so. So, like Rhit said, dig into them with your monitor, think on them, chew on them, see if where you can apply them to your life, and hopefully it'll take you to a good place and build a strong foundation for you to move forward on your Masonic journey.
So with
yes.
the Four Cardinal Virtues, the lack of detail in the short form is why I added, I'm still learning all of this ritual and stuff like that, but I've got the lectures down short form. And I decided before I do anything else, I wanted to at least add the long form section for the 4 Cardinal Virtues, because they're so important. And I know that he's kind of burnt out at the end of the evening. He's just gotten initiated. He's still going, what's going on? But that needs to be impressed upon the minds of every Mason, right? Like they say in the lecture. But it's the short form, it relates it to, hey, this reminds you about this, which is why we do this in the ritual, or, you're reminded of this thing that happened in the ritual. It doesn't make sense, or at least to me, it doesn't make sense without the detail on those virtues. And I was actually pulling candidates aside after the degree was done and be like, hey, this is why, and I would give them the plain English explanation until I finally went and memorized it so that I could give that full explanation, because I do believe that they are really important. It's also something kind of in the Past Masters lecture. I recently heard the Past Masters lecture in chapter again, and it's just a very beautiful lecture, and it talks about the importance of the Bible. I guess maybe the volume of sacred law if you don't subscribe to the Bible specifically, but it talks about how you can learn all of these things and all of this stuff that we've been talking about tonight. You can find that in your volume of sacred law. So when in doubt, go back to that book, that yonder book, and read it to be wise. It's a great refresher course, because if you can't remember any of the degrees and you can't get to a lodge, you've still got your book. So,
yes, and I think it's a great point you made about learning the long form of these cardinal virtues, because you've done a great job at learning this, and I get the distinctive impression you're learning it for yourself. You're getting a lot out of it for yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing it if I wasn't enjoying it and feeling because it's not just satisfaction. Like, satisfaction is not the right word for it. And fulfillment is too much. So it's somewhere more meaningful than satisfaction, but not quite as severe as fulfillment. Something's going on.
No,
somehow.
I think if every Mason got a taste of it, because you learn it for yourself, and then you go give it at lodge for me, because we talked about it earlier. While we have to do it because it's part of the ritual for the candidate, that's fine. He'll get what he gets out of it, but you're giving that lecture to your brothers, for their growth. But you learn it for yourself, and there's nothing like that feeling when you do a good lecture or degree work that you've worked on in front of your brothers, and they come up and tell you, good job. There's something to that as well. So get out there and learn it for sure.
Great discussion, guys. I really enjoyed this one. Gabe, do you want to pump us over to events?
Sure thing. All right, so this week is going to be a little light on events, and I think the next coming weeks are going to be too. June and July tend to be very busy due to lodges planning installations and holding installations. So in North Texas and Tarrant County, on June 2nd, it turns out I've been advertising it with a wrong date for a couple of weeks, so I beg y'all's forgiveness. I was just informed that the date for this particular event has been changed to tomorrow at 6 p.m. It's June 2nd. Ken Curry is receiving his Golden Trowel Award at Handley Lodge 1140. Kickoff is at 6 p.m., and Handley Lodge is located at 2501 Pollard Street in Fort Worth. Now, I know that's really short notice, but like I said, I didn't learn about the new date until very recently. On June 3rd, Web Lodge 1454 is hosting the 3rd annual Web Masonic Motorcycle Rally and Lodge Tour. So that's this Saturday from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. The starting location will be Web Lodge's Dining Hall. Breakfast will be provided at 7 a.m. by the wonderful sisters of the Web chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star. The rider meeting is at 8 a.m. and rollout is half an hour after that. The tour is Godly Lodge 822, Glen Rose Lodge 525, Chalk Mountain Lodge 894, Heiko Lodge 477, Dublin Lodge 504, and Stephenville Lodge 267. Lunch will be available at Heiko Lodge 477 at 12:30. The suggested donation is $7, so bring 10. And while this event is advertised as a Masonic motorcycle rally, non-Masons and non-motorcyclists are also welcome. All vehicles are welcome. So pre-registration is $10 per motorcycle and rider, or $10 for automobile and driver. So each passenger is an additional $5. On-site registration is $15 per rider, but still just $5 per passenger. So if you want to learn more, reach out to Brother Junior Warden Michael Mad Dog Lothorpe, who is the ride chairman. He can be reached at 817-276-9090 or at bigdog@scootdog.com, and that's bigdog@skootdog.com. On June 23rd, Bolivar Masonic Lodge is hosting their third annual clay shoot. Registration is at 8 a.m., start is at 9 a.m., and the location is Fossil Point Sporting Grounds at 7282 North Farm Road 51 in Decatur, Texas. The event will be organized into 4-person teams at $100 per person. Lunch is provided. Trophy belt buckles will be awarded to the highest overall team score and the highest overall individual score. First, second, and third place teams will also receive trophies. Station sponsorship fees are $150 per station. Ear and eye pro are required, and you must bring your own ammo. Now, the deadline for registration has passed. It was May 23rd, I think, but try reaching out to them at secretarybolivar418@gmail.com just in case. Maybe see if they have some spots open. I don't know. On June 23rd, the Brothers of New Day Lodge 655 are holding their Real Fathers, Real Men Soul Food Experience fundraiser event. They'll be providing chef-made tasty meals to go. Each meal is packaged in a reheatable container for ease of preparation and serving. So if you're located in the DFW area, they'll deliver the menu items to your door at a date and time of your choosing. The event is happening all weekend of June 23rd, so they'll be taking orders until 8 p.m. on the 24th and delivering until 5 p.m. on the 25th. They're offering baby back ribs, barbecue chicken wings, meat combos, taters, beans, coleslaw, sauce from scratch, and banana pudding. They've got individual plates, and then they've also got family meals that feed up to 6. They're taking pre-orders now, so please reach out to them at www.newdaylodgepha655.org and put in an order. The brothers from New Day encourage you to join in on the Real Fathers, Real Men Soul Food Experience and warn you, sleep late, lose weight. On June 26th, the River Oaks Lodge is having their installation. Brother Sam Levacy is being installed as Worshipful Master at the age of 100 years old. Most Worshipful Grand Master Jerry Kirby will be presiding over the installation, and the Tarrant County Commandery Standard Guard will be presenting the American and Texan flags. So the meal will be at 6 p.m., and the installation will be at 7 p.m. Fort Worth Lodge's very own Senior Warden, Greg Wright, will be smoking the barbecue. So please join us in welcoming our favorite centenarian, Brother Sam, to the Oriental Chair. And we've got a couple events lined up for the temple. On June 19th, Texas Chapter 362 will be conferring the Royal Arch Mason degree on 3 worthy, most excellent masters. If you're a Royal Arch Mason, please come and join us. It'll be great. It's one of my favorite degrees. This is still a little tentative, but we usually kick off degrees at 6:30 p.m. On June 24th, Fort Worth Lodge 148 will be hosting its installation. So if you are a friend or family member of a Fort Worth Lodge member and you're interested in attending, please reach out to them or us. If you want to touch base with Fort Worth Lodge 148, hit us up at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook or info148 at fortworth148.org. If you live in the 64th District of the Grand Lodge of Texas and you want to promote an event, please reach out to them at 64th.org, 64th.org. This week's quote is, "The highest morality may prove also to be the highest wisdom when the half-told story comes to be finished." And that is a quote from Brother Sir Arthur Ignatius Conan Doyle.
That guy was out there. I love him.
That's
amazing. Sherlock Holmes, right?
Yes. I grew up on those books, and when I found out that he was a brother, I was just thrilled. But I think Sherlock Holmes is maybe not a great example of temperance, but he's certainly an example of fortitude.
Yes, absolutely. And justice.
Hero.
And justice, yes.
No.
I love me some Sherlock Holmes. Not as bad as Star Trek, but,
Let's back that truck up. I think we're ready to sign this thing off, right?
Back that truck up.
Yeah, back that truck up.
Go to your
Goodness
corner,
gravy.
Back to the corner.
All right, brothers.
Discussion tonight, guys.
Absolutely. I love doing these podcasts just to talk about this nonsense and ramble on. Good one, boys.
Good job, guys. All right.
All right, boys. This is Rhit Moore signing off.
Signing off.
Gabriel Jagush signing off.